Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, continuing to take a look at some of these programs heading into 2023 that we think can win a national championship. In one of these programs, and Bill, I'm a little bitter about it because if you guys have been listening to us for about 12 months now, this was a team I was extremely high on midway through the season after they had some brutal injuries and kind of went through a tough 3-game stretch. They came out of that bye week, and you did not want to see this Florida State team. And I was on them when it was a little less cool to be on them. Now everyone's on the Florida State Seminoles. We're talking, how can the Florida State Seminoles win a national championship in 2023? Now, before we do again, just want to say thank you to you guys, and especially the Florida State fans. Like, it's been a very fun offseason in terms of transfer portal additions. We just talked Keon Coleman a couple weeks ago, and the support you guys have shown, the Seminole fans have shown, truly was awesome. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, the first game preview we have for the summer is taking an early look at the Florida State LSU game, which really, if you think about it, might be the best game we'll see in the regular season. So even if you're an LSU fan, getting a little scouting in on Florida State, lock in, because we got some fun content talking Florida State, talking LSU later to come. Without further ado, Dale, I'm going to kick this one off to you and just get kind of your overarching takes on this Florida State team before we head into our reasons why this team's winning a national championship.
I mean, it feels like Mike Norvell's kind of got it rolling now, and he did get off to kind of a slow start. It felt like they obviously weren't super successful right out of the jump, but now the recruiting seems like that's picking up. The transfer portal talent they're bringing in has been solid, and at the end of the day, they got a quarterback in Jordan Travis, and he's the guy to lead them.
Spoiler alert, he's not going to be our first reason because we kind of wanted to go maybe off a little the beaten trail for our first reason, but Jordan Travis and the potential Heisman quarterback play he could have in 2023 is certainly going to be a reason why. Dill, let's get into the first reason, and this is the offensive weapons that they have surrounding Jordan Travis, right? You have one of the better college football quarterbacks in the country, Jordan Travis, but you take a look at this team in 2021, and I'm just going to read you their two leading receivers in their stat lines. We had Ontario Wilson, who had 23 catches for 382 yards, and then Andrew Parchment for 24 catches and 363 yards. Those were the two leading receivers for this Florida State team in 2021. You fast forward 24 months, and I think we're looking at potentially one of the best wide receiver rooms and just offensive playmaker rooms in the whole entire country here.
And honestly, the land of Keon Coleman at the end of the portal season was huge. I think people don't get quite how good he is, because at Michigan State, the numbers weren't eye-popping by any means, but that offense was really, really bad. You look at the game, I mean, he was taking games over. I think he's a better athlete than people give him credit for. Everyone kind of knows his jump ball, contested catch game. You saw it against Michigan. Obviously, that was kind of his breakout, but he's a guy who I think he runs really clean routes. He's a better athlete with the ball in his hands than people think, and he's just a monster get to, again, pair with guys like Johnny Wilson. Like, I think he adds a ton to that unit.
As Michigan fans, here we go. Like, we know all too well how good Keon Coleman was, and I'm not complaining at the slightest that he's not playing in the Big Ten anymore. He was a handful, and you look at the talent around Jordan Travis. I don't know how defenses are going to deal with this. Like, Keon Coleman, potentially one of the best contested ball catchers in the country, and you have Johnny Wilson, who's 6'7", and you saw what he did in 2022. If he builds on that, gets some more reliable hands, which was at one point a little bit of the bugaboo, is just making sure he's holding on to the football. You're looking at a duo that is just a lot to handle from a size and athleticism standpoint. But I kind of want to dig a little deeper. Like, this offense uses their tight ends extremely well. Jaheim Bell coming over from South Carolina, kind of a do-it-all, all-purpose tight end. You have Kyle Morlock, who is another massive, massive target. And then go to little sleepers. Winston Wright Jr., who, again, 12 months ago before the car accident, was the guy that I thought would be the dude on this Florida State team, and then rounded out with Hakeem Williams, the true freshman. Florida State fans were kind of giving me some friendly action in the comment section when we talked Keon Coleman and saying that I was sleeping on some of these wide receivers. I'm like, I could go down and just list every single wide receiver that they have on this offense. I didn't, but this offensive playmaker that is surrounding Jordan Travis and what they've done particularly at the wide receiver room in the last 24 months. I don't think you've seen many better roster management actions than you've seen in Florida State at this wide receiver room.
Yeah, and that'll be it. I mean, Jordan Travis, again, he's kind of built his way up into what he is now. I think he's throwing the ball extremely well. And with this class of weapons, they're going to be dangerous. And we talk about it. It's really easy to be a good offense when you can hit explosive plays, and they got a plethora of guys who can do it.
Yeah, reason two, and that's pass rush. And if you guys listen to us talk defense in relation to college football, that's what we start with. Like when you're looking at a defense and you have the ability to just get pressure rushing 4 guys and have a guy like Jared Verse who just you can trust to beat any left tackle, right tackle in the entire country, that makes a defense so much harder to handle. What I go past just pass rush is the depth they have on this defensive line, right? Jared Verse, in my mind, the best edge rusher in college football entering 2023. On the other side, you have a guy, Patrick Payton, who freshman ACC of the year last year, a guy that Derek McClendon transfers because Patrick Payton is going to be the guy on the other side. And then Fabian Lovett, a dude that just wasn't necessarily healthy in 2022. He's coming back. Then you go to Western Michigan and get Braden Fisk, and then South Carolina with Gilbert Edmond. It's not only a really good group in terms of your starting 4 on the defensive line, but it's a group that's deep. You're going to be able to cycle some defensive linemen in, and you look at kind of the blueprint of those elite defensive line pass rush units. Depth is key. I don't think Florida State necessarily had that last year. They certainly have it in 2023.
And that's kind of what you think. Like Florida State obviously had dogs last year too. And when they were fully healthy, they were a problem. But if you're going to try to win a college football national championship, you can't drop games to teams they should beat, like that little 3-game skid they went on. If Jared Verse and the rest of them are fully ready to go, they maybe lose one of those games, maybe. And now again, you can throw 2-3 waves at teams, and even if Jared Verse sits a game against Syracuse, it shouldn't be a problem, or sits a game against Pitt. You got the guys to step in now. Last year, it did feel like at times they didn't really have guys behind Verse, and he was playing very hampered. And that's just like, I don't know, like maybe they just didn't feel like they had a guy to put in there.
That's what's not talked about enough is that this Florida State team that was a top 10 team, in my opinion, as a fully healthy team, they just caught a really unlucky time to have those injuries, right? They probably played their hardest 3-game stretch, playing Wake Forest, then going on the road to NC State, and then playing Clemson. Those are probably the 3 games you don't want to be hurt for. Then they got the bye week, and you saw the rest was history. Like that was a Florida State team that nobody wanted a part of the rest of the year once they got healthy. I think not only what you said, having that starting group of a pass rush, but also having the depth, particularly at that defensive line where you can cycle guys in and out. That is what I think could take this team to the next level. And reason 3, this is the biggest reason, and it's the Heisman quarterback play that you could see out of Jordan Travis. And what I go to is not only is Jordan Travis just like what you saw from him in 2022 was truly special. What's even more enticing is the improvement you've seen from Jordan Travis from year to year to year. You have some guys coming back. I think Bo Nix might be a guy that – Bo Nix is coming back to Oregon, and this is no knock on Bo Nix or the Oregon Ducks here, but I don't know how much better play you're going to get from Bo Nix in 2023 as opposed to 2022. Jordan Travis, although a 6-year senior, has gotten better as a pocket passer every single year. He had a 63% completion percentage on a over 2 yards more pass attempts. I did not say that stat right, but basically pushing the ball downfield more and completing more of his passes. Like the progression you've seen from Jordan Travis over the last 3 years as he's kind of taken over that starting job is massive. And if he puts another step in the right direction on what he did in 2022, I truly do think you should start to print the shirts Jordan Travis for Heisman here.
In one thing you kind of think Jordan Travis is he's always had that dog in him. It's like when he first started to get his reps in 2019, when obviously not really a full-time starter, but when he'd come in the game, obviously wasn't really a developed quarterback at that point, but he would grind out games. Like he'd make plays. He'd find a way to move the ball when Florida State, frankly, in some of those early years with him, couldn't move it at all. Yeah. So he's again still has that mentality, that winner mindset, that toughness that you kind of want to see in a quarterback. But now he's put that together along with the athleticism, with a very developed passing or passing skill set.
Yeah, that's what I'm most like. This is easily the most developed we've seen him as a pocket passer, and now it's easily the most talented group of offensive playmakers that he's surrounded by. I really do think you could see a really special season from Jordan Travis heading into 2023. And the last two to round it out here, returning production. Dill, I don't think I've seen this at the college football level in a very long time. Florida State, a bona fide top 10 team, according to almost every power rankings you look at, especially when healthy, is the number one team in terms of returning production. Like, you look on the offensive side of the ball, I think the only guy that kind of comes to mind right now who they're losing is Trayshawn Ward, and he hit the portal because he was just kind of getting phased out at that running back spot with how good Trey Benson's been. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they lose one draft pick, Jamie Robinson, who I believe was a round 4 pick. This is a team that was, and I think that was their only draft pick that they had. So this is a team that was a top 10 team in the country that only lost one guy to the NFL draft and is pretty much returning everybody else. I can't remember the last time I've seen something like that, but when you talk about windows for college football programs to kind of break through, win an ACC championship, win a national championship, that's the recipe for that window.
I mean, when you have like legit pros like a Jared Verse come back, a Johnny Wilson come back, some of those linemen like a Robert Scott come back, and even like even a Kalen DeLoach or a Tatum Bethune, like those guys are, I think all of them have a shot to go into the NFL and get drafted. Would have all, besides Verse and probably Wilson, been like high picks? Probably not. But again, when you have guys who are faced with the opportunity to go pro, and in a wave, like pretty much all come back, anybody you could possibly dream of, and then more when Jared Verse decided he was going to come back, it does make you think, like, what do they know about this team and this culture and this kind of where this is going, that like Jared Verse, what's left for him to prove in college? Like, he was going to be a first-round pick.
It's the exact point. Like, Jared Verse would have been a top 10 pick. Like, we get into the NFL draft a lot, and Jared Verse was comfortably a top 3 edge guy on my board. Probably would have ended it at 2 over Miles Murphy had he went to the NFL draft. He comes back, like you said, with nothing really to prove. Like, he's still probably just going to be a top 10 pick next year. What does that tell you? Jordan Travis coming back as well for 6 years.
Yeah, I leave him off. That's crazy.
They're looking at this program and saying, this is the year. Like, this is the year that this group can do something special. And even kind of going further than just returning production on the field, it's like that veteran leadership, like having a 6-year quarterback that's played in big games in Jordan Travis, having a guy who's a legit one of the best players in college football in Jared Verse off the edge, Fabian Lovett in the middle. They have a ton of not only returning production, but that returning production that were leaders are back for 2023. And that's, again, building on just what could be a special season for Florida State and Mike Norvell. The last thing I want to talk about before we just take a brief look at the schedule, and again, we'll get into this team and the depth chart and kind of specific players in our summer scouting series, and we're just talking some broad reasons why Florida State can win a national championship. Depth and transfer portal additions, right? This is a team that, because they got hurt, their lack of depth kind of showed. Like, against Wake Forest, against NC State, they had some guys on the offensive line starting that probably should have been starting Power 5 level football yet. Now I think what they've done in the transfer portal, I think they've kind of fixed that depth a little bit, particularly on that offensive line. And if you get big-time production from some of these guys in the transfer portal, whether they're starters or depth pieces, that's kind of the missing piece for this Florida State team to kind of break through in 2023.
Well, and you see the importance of that now. It's like a USC when, like, plugging holes. Like, if you can go be a Florida State team and attract those guys who, I mean, they've proven it. A Jeremiah Byers really good.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jaheim Bell, like, this is kind of it for him in college. It's go time. I'm going to Florida State. Frentrell Cypress, same thing. Like, these guys they're probably NFL players, and they're just like, all right, give me 1 year, do something special in college. And to pick Florida State, again, it's just all points towards there's some legit belief in a lot of guys in this locker room that they're right up there with Georgia. They're right up there with Clemson or Alabama or Ohio State or any of these big dog teams, because why else they're not picking Florida State otherwise.
Yeah, and that's another thing that what we've noticed when you talk about trying to break through and win a national title, make the college football playoffs, it's also a significant portion of it is surveying the college football landscape and seeing, okay, what do the other teams look like? You look at Georgia, replacing a ton of production and a starting quarterback. Alabama, replacing a Heisman Trophy winner quarterback. Ohio State, replacing quarterback. So a lot of those top teams that are normally the college football, the national championship favorites, they have some question marks. You look at this Florida State team in 2023 and look up and down that depth chart. I'm looking at it right now. I don't know if I have a single question about this depth chart in terms of, is there a position group that you do not feel comfortable about? I mean, you had question marks about the cornerback spot. You go out and get one of the best cornerbacks in Fentrell Cypress from Virginia. You have question marks about the offensive line depth. You go get Jeremiah Byers, who probably starts. Casey Roddick, who might start. If he doesn't start, he's going to be a depth piece on that offensive line. Gilbert Edmonds, probably not even going to start at edge, but he's going to be a piece that's going to be playing significant reps. It's a team that you don't have many question marks about. The final key to this, I guess you're saying, is taking a look at the schedule and how does it play out. And we'll talk briefly about this LSU game, and then we'll kind of preview it later in the summer. But how many games do you think Florida State can lose and still make it to the college football playoffs? My answer, probably one.
It's definitely one. They lose 2 games. I mean, again, you got really strong teams coming out of the Big 12, Big 10, I should say, and then the Pac-12, and obviously either Georgia or Bama probably, or LSU out of the SEC. So it's going to be tough. With USC kind of emerging, I don't think any teams really have room for the second loss now.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. But I think because they play LSU cross-conference, I think they could lose that game, run the table in the ACC, win an ACC title, and probably still have a strong argument to get into the college football
playoff. They have a brutal schedule in a sense, because granted the ACC is weak, so it's adjust for that. But to play LSU and Florida out of conference is not a joke. You look at some of these teams like Michigan and Georgia playing tomato can team, is not what Florida State's done.
It's no joke. And so I think you look at LSU neutral site in Orlando is probably a game that game straight up has my brain in a pretzel. I've looked at that game. I've looked how these teams match up. I can't wait to get into it and talk about it on this. But it's a toss-up game. I think most Florida State fans would say it's a toss-up game. And I think maybe because of all this returning production that you feel good about it. If you do lose that game, I mean, I still going on the road to Clemson is going to be tough, but I'm probably leaning Florida State because I don't have that many questions about this Florida State team. If healthy, I have a lot more questions about this Clemson team. Then you go on the road the last year, the game of the season, and play another SEC team to kind of get another stamp of approval of how good this team is. I think you can drop the LSU game close and then run the table and be okay. Oregon did a very similar thing last year. They get smoked by Georgia, neutral site in Atlanta, and then they start running the table, and all of a sudden they're a team that's being talked about as a college football playoff team until they lose later in the season. So having LSU week 1, I think, helps because even if you lose that game, when they're talking about who's in the college football playoffs in December, that game at LSU it's going to mean something. Don't get me wrong, but it's going to be a game that's hey, this Florida State team hasn't lost since. They're one of the best teams in college football. So I think they have some room to lose that game. That's about it. Again, this Florida State team, it does seem like these college football programs, all besides Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, they have windows. They have windows to win a national championship. It does seem like Florida State has a window in 2023 to put something special together. So we're excited to cover this team again. If you do enjoy the content, if we'd appreciate it if you guys would subscribe to the channel to lock in, get some more information and some more content. We appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.